What's up, fellas? Lady fellas. Guys, welcome back to JustNutz. Today, we're doing a little top 10, top 5 video. It's top 10, but sometimes they're muddled between 5 and 10, but today it's 10. I'm doing a really interesting video because of a recent trend Konami's been going on. I'm doing a little speculation video on that, where they've been taking these old classic monsters and turning them into their own archetypes. Out of nowhere, boom, 10 cards for a whole, like one card, and it makes an entire archetype. And they've been pretty successful. I mean, some of the classic ones, the ones that have been around a long time, are like Red Eyes, Dark Magician, Blue Eyes, stuff like that. But those were kind of like, we could guess those were coming. Like, those are like 3 of the most classic monsters in the entire game. We could see that coming. You got like Karibo. They turned Karibo into like essentially a whole archetype by himself. Whole bunch of stuff like that. But we've gotten some recent ones as well. We've gotten like the most notable one as far as like relative to the metagame is Thunder Dragons. Thunder Dragons have been huge. They still are huge right now. We see stuff like Simorgh support just got released. They're getting an entire Simorgh archetype. And we got Nephthys in the deck build pack Hidden Summoners. And there's others too that I'm not thinking off the top of my head, but it's just been a recent trend of Konami doing this. So I want to make a video going over the 10 monsters that I think could be front runners for like getting its own archetype. So pretty much the criteria I went for here is like, how classic are they? How eligible are they to be like a piece of an archetype, if that makes sense? Like, there were like some classic monsters that I found, but they were just like so singularly themselves in terms of what they did, like effect wise, that like I was just like, I don't think an archetype would really work built around this. And maybe that's just my you know, blindsidedness, not realizing that some could have. So as always, this is all opinion. If you disagree, feel free to let me know. Feel free to let me know what you think I missed, what monsters specifically you think I missed on here. And yeah, let's just jump right in. So the first card I have here, I never like to spoil it. I always leave the first one up on the board, is Spirit Reaper. So Spirit Reaper is a really interesting old card, a really annoying old card that somebody I know, GT, used to use when we would duel way back in the day, and it was obscenely obnoxious. It would just stall for turns and turns and turns, and maybe I'd be getting board advantages, he wasn't, but he was just waiting for that one card that was just going to blow the game wide open. Like, he was waiting for the one dark hole in his deck to blow the game wide open, because if I don't draw a card that can like affect this, like target this card, then I can't do anything to it. But a pretty interesting card, a pretty classic card. I think everybody who's been playing the game for a long time knows Spirit Reaper. It'd be a cool another like zombie archetype. And yeah, so Spirit Reaper, he's number 10 because I thought like his name doesn't really lend itself to be an entire archetype. Like, what do you call it? Like the Reaper archetype? I guess that'd be cool, but it seems a little generic. I mean, we have vampires, so maybe Reaper would work. But yeah, pretty cool. Number 9, I put Coach Soldier Wolfbark. So this card, I feel like otherwise wouldn't have ever been all that relevant in Yu-Gi-Oh! Except for the days of Fire Fist. And that's where this card really saw its play in the meta at all, like, because it only works for Beast Warriors, just reviving level 4 Fire Beast Warriors from the grave once per turn, I might add. So every turn, if you just keep him up, you can just keep doing that, or if you can summon him back, do it again. He's pretty nuts. And the reason I like him, so one, I like his design, and 2, I love Beast Warriors, is his name really lends itself to becoming an archetype, if that makes sense. So like when you look at these archetypes, you look at Blue Eyes White Dragon, great, you have the Blue Eyes archetype. Red Eyes Black Dragon, you have Red Eyes archetype. Dark Magician, it doesn't really work name-wise, so that one's not that great. But Thunder Dragon, every monster in the archetype's name is Thunder Dragon something, and so you end up with something like that. So it has a great name to become an archetype like that, to have cards based around it that literally just said like, that literally can just say like, add one coach monster, coach soldier, coach captain card. Because there is one other card that I guess kind of goes with Wolfbark called Coach Captain Bearman. He's not as good as Wolfbark. You can normal summon him without tributing, but he's like, his attack gets cut in half. He's just like a poor man's Barbaros. But that's not important. He could be a part of the archetype. I don't know. But this guy's pretty cool, and I think his name is really lends it open, and I think it'd be really cool to have like a Beast Warrior archetype based off of this. And he's cool. They're like armored Beast Warriors, and that's dope. So I put Coach Soldier Wolfbark. This is a personal preference, obviously, but yeah, that's what this list is. Next up on the list, I put Light and Darkness Dragon. I put this here. Well, so the weird thing about this, if I remember correctly, this is used by Chaz in GX, but he also had like other monsters that went with this, but we never got those released in the TCG. I don't even know if they have them in the OCG. I doubt it. I think I would have heard about it by now. They're like, why don't we have these cards? I don't think they ever released them outside of like the anime. So for that reason, I put him here because that would just lend itself easy. They already have a couple cards designed. They just got to drop them. And I think it's just such a dope like monster. Light and Darkness Dragon. The name lends itself to becoming an archetype of just light and darkness this, light and darkness that, light and darkness this. You know what I mean? To make a whole archetype around. And his effect is a generic negate, which is awesome. Oh, my allergies. My nose is like killing me. All right. But yeah, I just think it's cool. It's a big dragon. I didn't want to put too many big dragons in here, so this is the only one, I believe. And I'm just also not the biggest fan of dragons in the first place. But yeah, I want to throw him around here. I thought he was the most interesting one. I thought he worked the best in terms of having his own archetype built around him. But yeah, Light and Darkness Dragon, really dope. I like him a lot. Then we move to one that's like my extreme personal preference out of all of these. This was like the number one, Mage Viola. So this one is interesting to me in a sense that like if they really worked around him, they could be the next. I say Noble Knights, that might get you depressed because Noble Knights obviously have never been that good. But the next deck that's built around equip spells. We just saw Evil Eye come around, but Evil Eye is built around one equip spell, so I wouldn't even like qualify it like that. But Mage Viola gains 500 attack for every card equipped to him. So with one equipped, he's already 2,050, which is pretty good for a level 4 monster. And then if you built around him pretty well, then you could really end up with an interesting archetype. So I don't know. I just thought he was cool. I thought the possibilities were pretty cool with equip spells. Like that's the thing is like nobody goes out and tries to make the equip spells like part of the engine, right? So like you look at like Noble Knights, they made these equip spells, but the equip spells are like just protection or a boost in attack or let you pop one spell or trap. They've never been incorporated with the engine. That's why Evil Eyes are way better than Noble Knights. It's just because Selene is literally like allows your engine to go. So that's like the problem there. So maybe if they made like spell cards that like he gives himself the buff, like he doesn't need the spell cards to give him the buff, he already buffs himself into a beat stick. So maybe the spell card could be like the Staff of Summoning or whatever, and it helps you summon something from your hand, graveyard, or deck, whatever. And those are the engine cards. That's what would make equip spells much better in an equip deck. And I think we'll get that at some point, but maybe this could be it. And so this is a personal choice, and also this is a very old card and a very, very cool card. I used this card when I was young and as I got older too, even though it was bad at that point. But yeah, he's really cool. I like him. Another really interesting one that I thought about is Ultimate Baseball Kid. So he's a fire monster. He gains 1,000 attack for every fire monster on the field except for himself. So he starts at 500. If you put one other fire on the field, he's 15. Two others, 25, 35, and so on and so forth, which is actually kind of dangerous. I mean, it's not like crazy, and that might be a little risky of a setup, but like he gets pretty big pretty quick. Also, you can send any other face-up fire monster you control the graveyard to inflict 500 damage to your opponent. So he does have an effect that can, I don't know, give you some spice and time. But the main thing I like Ultimate Baseball Kid is because I feel like the sports aspect could be explored here. So you look at UAs, and we've seen all their monsters, but they span like all sports across the board. Not all sports, but like the biggest sports all across the board. And Ultimate Baseball Kid has like their own sport lockdown, and they would have a whole different style, and I think it would still work. And like, just look at the catcher. Like literally, the catcher could be the next card. It could be a more defensive card. It can be a card that, I don't know, when he's summoned, you could special Ultimate Baseball Kid from hand or deck, something like that. A nice engine piece, and then you just play like the other positions. You know what I mean? You've got like Ultimate Baseball Kid pitcher. I don't know how the names would work, but you know, it could. You know, shortstop, first baseman, second baseman, third baseman, outfielder, all that stuff. Coach, Ultimate Baseball Coach, something like that. And I think it could be a cool little archetype. I like that they're little like chibi characters. They're super cute, and I think they could really do something spicy with it. I don't think they'd be very good, but you know, depends what we see. So pretty cool. Next up is a very controversial one, even to myself. I like thought about it, and I was like, oh god, how would they even do that? I put Thunder King Rio on here because I think he's such a classic monster. He's been so good for so long, and like he's a beat stick. Your opponent can't search, and well, you both can't search, and also he negates any special summon. It's nuts. He's a nuts card, and because I think he's such a powerful one card, I don't know how they would be able, like, the rest of the cards in the archetype would have to be, like, mediocre. But I think maybe they could do it. Just make him into archetype. I just think he's that classic of a card. He's that easy to build around because he's so strong himself that they wouldn't have to make busted cards around him. He is the busted card. So, I don't know, it could be, like, the next kind of, like, stun variant deck. And it makes it a little more consistent getting to him. I don't know, some kind of searcher or something like that. And yeah, to just be the Thunder King archetype, I think would be pretty cool. Maybe it's a little too close to Thunder Dragons, and maybe they'd want to back off of Thunders for a little bit now that we've had a great Thunder deck in our metagame for a hot minute. But still, I think he'd be really cool and really easy to build around. They wouldn't have to do too much. It could be mediocre support that's just barely good enough to make it an archetype, and he will do the rest himself. So Thunder King Rio, really, really strong. Cannot avoid it. So this one, it goes down a different alley. So most of the ones that I put on here were on here because they're like classic cards. Like they're old cards. And if they're not that old, they're like just already put their stamp on the game so like much that like everybody knows them. But this one is one where they kind of made him. He never really did anything. And people were like, wow, that's such a specific card and seems like he'd be part of an archetype, but like never really was. So there's not really much support for this card, but Spellstone Sorcerer Karud. And keep in mind here, guys, I'm going under the pretense that, or under the assumption that, like, just like Thunder Dragons, just like Simorg, these cards would get just like 10 like cards dropped for the deck at once, at least in the same like product. So if you see this and you're like, they already have 1 or 2 cards, so like one of the other cards we'll see, some of the other ones that we've already gone through already have like 1 or 2 cards that have like already sort of are like archetypal cards, but like I'm talking about like 10, like a whole thing dropped at the same time. So, but this guy is something that never really made a stamp on the game at all, but he was really interesting, and he works with spell counters or spellstone counters, and he just seemed like so specific. Like you just have a spellstone archetype, like super easy. He could be the face of it. I don't know. It just seems like too specific anything, just a too specific of a card. Spellstone Sorcerer, like that should be an archetype for sure. Be a really cool spellcast archetype, but it never really came to fruition. So I think this would be really interesting if they actually fleshed this card out and a whole archetype around him. But yeah, that's the only reason I put him here. That's why he's different from all the rest of the monsters on this list. Next, we have Celtic Guardian. This is the only normal monster I put on here. He already has 2 other monsters with him. Obnoxious Celtic Guardian, not very good. And then Celtic Guard of Noble Arms. He's okay, but I don't know. I just thought this one is the most classic monster on this list that like could get an archetype. It would just be like an elf like army archetype, right? Like an elf guard archetype, and that could be so cool. Like you get Celtic Guardian, Celtic Soldier, Celtic Warrior, Celtic, Captain, whatever you want. You can really flesh it out with this guy, and I just think he's really cool. His design is dope. Nobody will deny that. He's never been very good, but Yugi still stuck with him, and just like the Magnet Warriors, even though they weren't that good when in their normal versions, we got them reprinted, and something like that would be really dope. So Celtic Guardian here as well. Number 2, we got Pumpkin, the King of Ghosts. So this was one of Bones' cards. This would be probably like, this one would be lit if this one got like a whole archetype. So this one's not very good. Essentially, he just lowers, right? Oh no, I'm sorry. He increases himself. I thought he. See, the problem with this card is that he relies on having Castle of Dark Illusion on the field, to like buff himself up, and he gets pretty big, but. I don't know, like they have Pump Princess, the Princess of Ghosts, I think. She's even better than he is. And other than that, like he's like super mediocre. He's been super power crept. But maybe if they wanted to redo him, I just thought he was that classic of a monster. One of the first, like, this is like the first zombie boss monster we ever saw. So I think it'd be really cool for them to go back and make him, give Bones a little love in the TCG. You know what I'm saying? So I thought Pumpkin really worked, and I thought they could really do some cool stuff with him. The last card here is Gilford, the Legend. Another card built around equip spells like Mage Viola, but this card never, I mean, I don't know, maybe he saw a little bit of play, but as far as I remember, I don't remember him ever being good. See, the main problem with this guy is that he straight up cannot be special summoned. So even if you try to Monster Reborn him after, or use it as special from hand, none of that stuff works. He has to be normal summoned. And he's also level 8, so you got to tribute 2 monsters just to get him on board, usually, which is just too much. Now, there are ways to mitigate that. Maybe there's an archetype. Maybe you could give him an archetype where there's stuff that gives you an additional normal, and then it says, like, if you're normal summoning a Gilford monster, you don't have to tribute for it, something like that. Just make him way easier, just normal him right up. And as soon as he is normal summoned, you can equip as many equip spells from your graveyard back to him as possible, or back to any warrior on the field, so it doesn't even have to be him. But he's just so cool. I thought his design is like so iconic. I had him as a kid, but I was never able to really make use of him. I think I tried putting him in a deck, but every time I drew him, I was like, this is impossible. Like, even if I can summon you, like, you're not worth. I didn't put enough equip spells in grave yet for you to even matter. So, like, it just wasn't worth. But I think he's just so iconically designed. He's so dope. He's a really cool card. And there's also Gilford the Lightning, too. It could just be a Gilford archetype and support Gilford the Lightning as well. And I just thought they were so good. Like, Joey's such a classic character. I don't know, he's beloved by everybody. I love Joey. He's my favorite character. And, yeah, I just thought this could be another equip spell. Maybe there's an equip spell that says, like, maybe you equip it to something, and then it lets you, like, normal Gilford from your hand for, like, no cost. Something like that. I don't know. But I think it could work. So that's pretty much it for the list, guys. Let me know what you think. Let me know if I missed anything specifically that you think could become an entire archetype on its own. And, yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed the video, go and subscribe to the channel for more stuff from me in the future. I'm sorry I went along, but I had 10 things to go through. I was trying to do a minute a card, but I ended up being like, what, a minute and a half a card, so it wasn't even that far off, but still. Oof. Sorry, guys. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.